Hello. I don't know if I'm live yet. I'm going to double check. If you're here, say hello. I'm just checking to see if I'm live. I don't even know if I'm on. Am I live? I am. Hello. So, is anybody here? Say hello if you're here. Let me just, there we go. I got my chat up and I don't think anybody's here yet. So I hope you don't all leave me just sitting here talking into the internet, talking to nobody. Because that would be quite lonely. I might just post in my community that I am live now. So hopefully some people will join me. It's all so quiet today. Oh, hi. Hi, DTM. How are you? You know, I am a little confused because actually my chat is not coming up. There you go. I can see you now. Hi. What should I call you? Because I've seen people in other channels call you dog, which just doesn't feel right. But should I call you Dog Training Mexico or DTM or Mexico? You must be like, you might be the person who watches from the furthest away. I'm assuming you're actually in Mexico. And I wonder if anyone else is here. If you're here, say hello and tell me what you'd like to talk about. I had some fun this week. I made a really interesting little meme where I looked at the rates of depression and anxiety and PTSD in people with narcissistic personality disorder, and they were like really, really high. And the other thing that was really high that I didn't put on the meme because it just in a room was substance abuse disorders, which is kind of interesting because I also saw lots of other content from people on social media saying narcissists enjoy torturing everyone else. Narcissists are very happy making life miserable for everyone else. And I'm like, no, that's not true. But I got a lot of really positive feedback for making that meme, which I was a little surprised by. I thought I might get some pushback, but I didn't. So that was nice. That was nice. So I know there's someone else here. Are you going to say hello and say where you're from and say what you'd like to talk about? Because it would be good to hear from you. Because lives are only really fun if other people talk. And it's not just me talking to YouTube by myself, which is a bit weird. DTM is fine. Oh, you're in Turkey. Oh, wow. And hello, Karen. It's nice to meet you. I love Turkey. I've been to Turkey several times on holiday, and it's such a lovely place. Food is amazing in Turkey. I love Turkish food. Really nice. Whereabouts in Turkey are you? I've been to a couple of different places in Turkey. I've been to probably all the tourist places, to be honest. But I haven't been to Istanbul. I'd love to go to Istanbul. I've heard it's an amazing city. But if you're here, do say hello. Okay, so Karen, known as Dog Training in Mexico, has a question. I think my 22-year-old daughter is a narcissist. She finds a way to always make passive-aggressive comments. I have no idea where that is. I hope it's nice. So what is your question about your 22-year-old daughter? The question is how to improve my relationship with my daughter. It's a really good question. What's your relationship like with your daughter? I mean, I should just point out that nothing I say is really individual advice, so I can only really give general comments. But I think one of the first things I would ask yourself is, what is your daughter's behavior when she's being passive aggressive, or you see her as being passive aggressive? What effect does that have on you, and what comes out for you? Like, do you go quiet? Do you get argumentative? Do you become critical of her? Do you try to please her? And I would think about your own responses and how they help and how they may cause a problem for you or for your relationship. And it would be really interesting to think more widely, like, are there particular things that are likely to trigger what you are seeing as passive-aggressive behavior? Which it might well be passive-aggressive behavior, I'm sure. You've given me an example. For example, I just bought her a fluffy blanket for her birthday, as where she lives is very chilly. I checked which color she preferred before she bought it. When I'm assuming there's a typo. I'll wait for the rest of your comment. It may be a little slow. I'm using streaming software, and I can see that sometimes if it's live on YouTube, it takes like a few seconds for the messages you send to go into the streaming software to tell me. So if I seem to be a little slow to respond, that's why. When she thanked me, she went on a rant about how she is against Amazon. So please never again send her anything from Amazon. Ouch. Ouch. Wow. It would be really interesting to give her that feedback, but you could do it in a nice way. I really like what Wendy Behary, who's my mentor and supervisor, recommends, which is something she calls empathic confrontation, which is basically you give someone a lot of empathy, and I don't know what the situation is with your daughter, but you might be saying something like you're really glad that she liked the blanket, that you hope she enjoys it, and that you are understanding what she's saying. Here we go. So you normally react by feeling upset and not wanting to get in conversations with her. So look, I'll give you a suggestion as to how to manage this, like how you could have a conversation with her. But this is not individual advice, so it's up to you. And I take no responsibility for the outcome, but I'll give you a suggestion, and you can decide if it's going to work for you. But you could really take, you could say to her something like, I'm glad that you like the blanket, and I understand that you have ethical concerns about Amazon, and I really value what a ethical person you are, and your strong sense of right and wrong, and your ethics and your principles, and what a principled person you are. And you could also even begin to couch up, like, I'm a little anxious about raising this, but I'm a little anxious about talking to you about this because I don't want to um, cause a problem in our relationship. Our relationship's so important to me. So I'm a little anxious of having this conversation, but I also don't want to be quiet and say nothing. But it's a little painful for me when I've bought you something that I bought in a thoughtful way because I thought you would like it and that it would be useful to you, to then kind of be made to feel like I've done the wrong thing or that I've displeased you in some way. And I don't think that's how you would want to come across. And kind of see how she responds. Um, but I think that's the challenge, isn't it? When you say nothing, you end up with this kind of quiet discomfort, fear, tiptoeing around on eggshells, that kind of thing. It's really difficult, and it's it's going to come across as so ungrateful when you've gone to the trouble of picking something that she wants that's in a color that she likes. I'd be really interested in what you think about what I just said and whether it would work for you. I also think can be really helpful to start by a conversation about the conversation. It's kind of like, I've got something I'd like to talk to you about, but I'm a little anxious. It kind of sets the tone of, but it's important for me and it's important for our relationship. So I want to have it, even though it's going to be uncomfortable for both of us, because it kind of softens the person and it sets the right kind of tone that you don't want this to be a confrontation, that you want this to be a collaborative, constructive conversation where you can both say what you feel, and see how it goes. Let me know if that's helpful. And it may not be. Everyone's an individual. Everyone's relationship is individual, and you never know how someone's going to respond. Yeah. If anyone's here, do say hi. Otherwise, Karen, I'm very happy to spend an evening having a chat with you. It's quite fun. And I love your comments. You make some really good, thoughtful comments here and on the Nameless Narcissist channel, and other places I've seen you. It's really nice. So, and I can see there's someone else here. So hello and welcome. If you want to say hello, use the chat. I'd love to say hello to you. Tell me where you are. Let me know if there's anything you'd like me to talk about. So, yeah, you think she uses political correctness as a way to get the upper hand. Yeah, I mean, that's horrible. It's horrible. What would you like to happen? Like, this is another thing to think about. What would you really, really like to happen with her? Yeah. I mean, sure, because she is very critical. Like, you bought her a gift and she's basically said you bought it from the wrong company. It is critical. Ouch. It might be interesting to tell her that. Ouch. I experience that as quite critical. It makes me feel a little unappreciated, which I don't think was your intention. And see what she says. Wow. Ouch. Something you can do. A colleague of mine suggests this, and it's quite an interesting one. If you're feeling brave as a parent, you can actually ask your grown-up child, you can acknowledge things have been difficult at times. We've had challenges. What do you think are the ways you feel like I let you down that you'd like me to acknowledge? And see how that goes. It's a very brave conversation to have, and it's not always appropriate, but yeah, I mean, it's really painful. And I hope you're able to find a way. You think her intention is in fact to upset you. I mean, it's possible, but I'd wonder why. Why would she want to upset you? What is going on for her? Um, because my guess would be she's trying to communicate something, but she's not able to communicate what she really wants to communicate. So what comes out is a kind of criticism and passive aggressiveness as opposed to what she really wants to say. And who knows? Who knows? I really hope. I mean, I hope there's some ideas that you can take and apply and see what you think. Um, and oh, hi, Sheena. I don't think we've met before. It's nice to meet. Um, oh, I mean, this is a big question. How do you handle a child's therapist believing her gaslighting narcissist father over her? I mean, this is a very tricky situation. And again, can I just point out that I can't give individualized advice on the internet. If you feel like your child's therapist is not getting the whole picture, you could certainly contact them and share your thoughts on the situation with them. That might be a good place to start. Um, and if your child is not happy with her therapist or feels like her therapist doesn't believe her, you could certainly consider seeing a different therapist. Um, but it's very difficult. Your first live. Oh, welcome. Um, I think this is like my fourth live. Yeah, it's my fourth live where I've actually been live. I've been in other people's lives. It's quite fun. I like being in other people's lives. You get to talk. And I have a very small audience at the moment, so it's quite nice. I actually get to respond to everyone and get to, um, get to answer most people's questions if they ask a question. Where are you from, Sheena? I don't think I've seen you before. Yeah, it's very, very difficult, and I think it's very difficult as well when therapists are seeing one person in a family system and they're not seeing the whole picture. Um, yeah, I'm really sorry she's going through that. It's really difficult. It's really challenging, you know. I hope, I hope you're able to cue the therapist in on a wider picture, and if not, then it might be. There are some times when, you have to give things time. The story will emerge over time. Um, and other times if your daughter's not happy with her therapist and doesn't feel like her therapist is believing or listening to her, then might be worth considering seeing a different therapist. But it's a difficult subject. It's difficult as well when you have different people in a family getting involved. I know certainly some adult therapists won't talk to anyone else. They'll only talk to the person that they're seeing in therapy. Um, I quite like to. I mean, I wouldn't talk to people outside of therapy, but I quite like when people bring their partners or their someone close to them into therapy. You certainly get a wider picture, and it can certainly change perceptions of things. But I really hope you're able to resolve that for your daughter. That sounds really, really challenging. So, yeah. We have sort of had these conversations before, just as you suggested, which is good. Thanks for that. Yeah, you're welcome. I hope it's helpful. And I think, there's no magic strategy here that you can just be like, oh, use this strategy and it works on everyone who has narcissistic personality disorder. That's not life. But if you are able to maybe have more of those conversations over time and take really good care of yourself when you're feeling criticized and feeling like you're being put down, and you can hopefully over time things evolve, things emerge, and people evolve, people shift. um, you know So hopefully your daughter will grow and develop and maybe um, change a little bit over time in her attitude towards you. So that's a good question. I've just assumed she's a child. So the therapist told me when I told her what happened to me that each party has their own way how they see the relationship, and I went on to say that I mean this is true. The therapist isn't wrong in that sense. People do have different perceptions of relationships. She's a court-ordered therapist. Very challenging. That's really challenging. I hope she's helpful to your daughter. Oh, that's so difficult. That's so, so difficult. I really it's really difficult, Sheena, and it's really not possible for me to give individual advice. Um, but I really, really hope your daughter's able to get good therapy. And, sometimes these things do evolve over time. And, you know, it's just such a difficult situation to be in for everyone. And the other thing you might want to do, Sheena, is if you have legal representatives, to share your concerns with them and get their advice. They've probably seen this kind of situation before. Unfortunately, it's not that unusual, but they may have some good advice for you. And they'll obviously, unlike me, they'll know your situation and may be able to give you much better, more individualized advice that I can't. So I really hope it works out for you. Yeah. So Karen, Dog Training Mexico, is going to look for an opportunity to have another conversation. I hope you can. I hope, and see it as over time, and see it as like, the more nicer conversations, the more constructive conversations you can have, and conversations where you're not just being quiet and avoiding her. Probably the more your relationship will begin to evolve and change in some way or other. Hi, Judy. It's nice to meet you. I don't think I've seen you before either. So introduce yourself. Say hello. I'd love to know more about you, what you might like me to talk about. It would be. It's lovely to meet you all. Lovely to meet new people. I'm curious how you guys found me as well, and what brings you here? What brings you to the channel? Dr. Ruth Ann, are you in the UK? Yes, I am in London. And you are right, my accent is British. It's quite a confused British accent. I'm originally from Belfast, which means that I used to have an accent that nobody could understand outside of Northern Ireland. And so my accent kind of evolved when I moved to England when I was 18. And I also, without any effort on my part, tend to shift accents based on who I'm talking to. So it's a little changeable at times, shall we say. When I first started making videos and I recorded them just for myself to see how I sounded, I'd say like I used to have 3 or 4 different accents in one video. Yeah, I mean, family court in the UK is difficult too. It's a really difficult situation. I feel for you. I really do. My accent is vaguely Irish, vaguely Northern Irish. Maybe I'll do a live after talking to my mother, and then I will sound very different. So your partner, I'm assuming you think your partner has narcissistic traits or narcissistic tendencies, left after 23 years of marriage. You have 2 young adult girls. Yeah, this is really difficult. This is the kind of work I do all the time. Um, it's a really, really common situation. What can you do to help yourself? Well, first of all, I think about the way you relate to yourself. You want to be your own best friend right now. You want to be the person who is looking after you. So, this really depends on how you are personally. So sometimes when I work with people in this situation, they're very depressed, they're really, really overwhelmed. And the first step is, well, let's just begin to look after you. Make sure you're sleeping, make sure you're eating, make sure you're getting up and getting dressed and getting out of the house now and again. That can be the very basic self-care is sometimes the beginning. And then I would be thinking about how do you begin? I mean, this is the interesting thing. So if he's left the marriage, how you've got an opportunity. You have an opportunity to have a very different relationship with yourself. And there is a period of time where I think you grieve and you mourn the loss of the relationship, and there can be lots of difficult upheavals in terms of sorting out divorce issues, um, dividing assets, all of that. And you may find that I hope you can get some good legal advice. And try to, as best you can, you have to try to keep this as calm as possible, keep the drama to the minimum. And that's a process, and that can be a long process. I've worked with people where that's taken years because their partner will not play ball, and that's really frustrating. Um, but I'd also say, think about, you've been in this marriage to someone for 23 years, and if you're suggesting they might be a narcissist, then clearly this has had some big impact on you. So I will be looking at, well, who did you become in that relationship? What parts of you came out? And maybe what parts have you lost? What parts of you haven't been able to come to the fore? And, if you begin by looking after you and taking care of you, and then be thinking, you know what? All of this stuff is going to be going on. You're going to have legal challenges, you're going to have practical concerns. But what about you? What about you? What kind of relationships do you want to develop? What kind of things interest you? What kind of things do you want to pursue now? If this person is out of your life, then I mean, absolutely comment, lost yourself. Now is your chance to go on a little bit of a discovery mission where you get to find yourself. And it can start very, very slowly. Really, it starts by looking after yourself and go and explore. Go and make sure that what I often suggest to people as well is that they ring fence time. This is my time where I will deal with lawyers, solicitors' letters, paperwork, those kind of challenging things. This is my time when I would deal with my own setting up home, my own financial situation, my own work situation. And then also think about, this is the time I will spend on me. And that time that you spend on you, how do you want to use it? Do you want to pursue an interest that you've had that maybe you haven't been able to pursue? Do you want to try out lots of new things? Do you want to go and see your friends or reconnect with family, reconnect with people from the past? You can begin to make new friends, reconnect with friendships that you've had in the past, and can be quite surprising how that aspect of things can evolve. And that is a good thing as that evolves and that grows. And you can be quite surprised at what emerges and how much you can find yourself. I don't know if that's helpful. Let me know. Yeah, and the grieving is hard, and it's a long process. It's not an overnight thing, and it will come in waves, and but that grieving is going to be part of the process, but so too is finding yourself. So too is exploring, um, and all of those things. And Karen saying, please try to make sure you obtain what you deserve financially in divorce. Keep your eyes open and don't let his awful behavior distract you from the division of assets. Absolutely. Absolutely. You need to, I really hope that you're in a position to get good legal advice, because it makes such a difference. Such a difference. Oops. And you may have to be patient. You may have to be very patient for that. Why won't he see me physically? So weird. But like there's all kinds of reasons, but he may be feeling quite ashamed. I mean, that's usually if someone's saying, I don't want to see you, I want to hide away, either they're frightened of you, or they're ashamed, maybe ashamed of themselves, ashamed to be seen by you, ashamed to be engaged with you. And I mean, you're right. You may not be able to negotiate with him. It would be really helpful. Sometimes this is where a good lawyer can really help you, if they can do some of that negotiation. There was a very good podcast recently by a British. I'll link to it. But it was an interview with a barrister who does divorce law, and he had some really helpful thoughts about negotiating with someone who was quite narcissistic in court, which some of it was very, very good and really kind of good advice. And he really also emphasized keeping things as low drama and as calm as possible. And he had some really good advice as well about financial settlements, and recommending to people that as far as possible, if you're able to avoid any ongoing financial ties, that can be very, very helpful if that is a possibility for you. So, and let your lawyer do what you're paying them to do, to hopefully get you what you want. And the other thing that was in this podcast that was so helpful was he talked about, think about what a win is for you. Because a win may not be getting the maximum amount of money possible. Your lawyer might think, well, I could get you more in court, I can negotiate more. But there will come a point where you're like, this is enough, and my peace of mind is more important to me. So that might be good. Thinking about, are there things that really, really matter to you? What are your priorities? It's probably not just money. You cheated. Oh, it's so painful. That is painful. That's going to hurt. And probably, I would imagine, Judy, I'm guessing, look, I'm totally guessing, and I don't know your ex. I haven't assessed him, so I can't possibly make any comment, but I'm thinking, hang on, someone who cheats in a 23-year marriage, leaves his wife, and doesn't want to see her. Someone's a bit ashamed of himself. That would be my guess. Yeah. Yeah, you are. This is the thing. Right now, Judy, your priority should be you. It's looking after you. And it is day to day. Make sure you eat. Make sure you sleep. Make sure you do nice things for yourself, because you deserve it. See, this is really about you nurturing and nourishing you. And you get to do it. You get to put your entire focus on you and your well-being. And that's where it should be. And, yes, there's going to be a lot of stress, and there's going to be a lot of challenges, particularly with kind of divorce and dealing with all of those kind of asset divides, and all of that is going to be really, really difficult. But regardless, keep your focus on you and really, really looking after yourself. And I hope you're able to. I hope you're able to do that. And I think if you do that, what I'll often say to people when I work with them is like, whatever you feed is going to grow. So if you feed the resentment monster, if you feed the battle in divorce courts to try to be as aggressive as you possibly can. And some, you have to pick your lawyer well. Some lawyers will deliberately be very aggressive. They're like, this is so unfair. I'm going to fight the bit out for you. And there can be good aspects to that, but that's not always what you need to win. That is not always the best thing for you. You've got to think about your best interest, what you most need to be at peace and at ease and to live the life you want. But if you feed yourself your well-being, the things that interest you, the things that excite you, the relationships in your life that are good for you, hopefully the relationships with your adult children, some friendships that you have, in a year's time, that's what you'll be. That's what will grow. So if you're saying you want peace inside, feed your own peace. What brings you moments, and it can just be moments, but what brings you moments of peace and contentment and joy? And if you can even notice, where do I find these little moments where I feel a little bit at peace, and deliberately put your attention and your focus there, you might be surprised at how much they grow. Yeah. And this is the truth. It may not seem like it right now, but things will get better. 1 year from now, you will be in a better place. I'm speaking from experience. Absolutely. Absolutely. This sounds like it's very recent, Judy. Just from what you're saying, it sounds like it's fairly something that's happened recently. And it's tough, Divorce, even when it's relatively amicable, is a tough process. But yeah. So I'm going to find that podcast for you, because I really, really liked it. I found it's a really good podcast that was really helpful. It's been 6 months. Yeah, that's recent. It's so recent. It's not going to be. So it's hard. It is going to be hard to let him go. But see, this is, what you get to do now? You get to embrace yourself. That's what you get to do. You get to embrace yourself and focus on you and building a relationship with yourself. And that is priceless. That is going to be so much more than what you're letting go. Yeah, it's such a common feeling, that people have. So I have just looked something up, and I am hopefully going to be able to put it in the chat. So I think that should have gone in the chat. And if you look in that, there's a link to a podcast, and there are a series of 2 or 3 episodes with a barrister called Nick Wilkinson. And they talk about basically representing people in court when their former spouse has narcissistic personality disorder or might have narcissistic personality disorder. And he's got some really thoughtful and wonderful, very calm, very measured advice. It's not the kind of angry, aggressive side. So even if, the legal side of things may be different wherever you are in the world, but his general ethos, I think, is really helpful for anybody. Oh gosh, yeah. I'm so sorry, Judy. It is so much loss, isn't it? And if losing your marriage and losing the relationship feels like another loss, it's probably also maybe reopening old wounds and old kind of things where you've lost something that was so precious to you and also lost a future. They're both situations where you've lost your future and you've lost hope for things that you had probably really looked forward to as lifelong relationships. So it's so painful. It's so painful. If you can get some good help for yourself, I think that would also be really helpful to you to get some support for you. Oh, Judy, you've got so much going on. If you've also just lost your brother, I'm so sorry. This must just feel like loss after loss after loss. So really take really good care of yourself, because this is so important. And I hope those thoughts are helpful to you. And obviously all I can do via YouTube is give general advice, but I really hope that's helpful. Yeah. And you've had so much loss in your life as well, Judy. If you're able to get some therapy for yourself, where you have a place where you can kind of process some of these things, that might be really good for you. But regardless as well, just look after yourself in very practical ways. I really hope so. Do you have friends or family who are supportive of you? I really hope you do. I hope you do. And also, I think what Karen, Dog Training Mexico, said is right. A year from now, you will be in a different place, and probably a better place, probably a much better place. It seems my software is now not allowing me to post comments on the screen. Yeah. But yes, you're very welcome, Judy, and I hope you're able to move forward. Yeah. I think you'd be surprised. I really do. I often say this to people I worked with. You might be surprised at if you are able to really take good care of yourself. And it's a process. This isn't something you do overnight, but if you really take care of yourself and you focus on yourself and you focus on building some things that are important to you, you might be pleasantly surprised at how much growth and development is possible and how much you discover about yourself. So I'm really interested. Anyone else here? And is there anything else you'd like me to talk about? So you're welcome, Judy. You're so welcome. No. Let me know if there's anything in particular that's helpful or that you'd like me to say more about. It's true. You have a small number of people in chat. You get the luxury of in-depth answers to your questions. I'm so glad. It's fun. I actually like this. I like it when it's small and actually get to know people. I kind of get to know who people are as well. So it's really nice. I hope I'm still able to give some in-depth answers on occasions. And I always think, I know other people have said that the first few people who follow your channel, they stay very special to you when you make a YouTube channel or any kind of content, because they become the people who you really remember. So I'm really glad you're here, and thank you so much for supporting me as I kind of do this, because it's new to me too, and I'm sure I make mistakes now and again. Once your channel grows a lot more, that will no longer be possible. Oh, no, I don't. I like this small intimate group. I hope I'll still have time and still be able to provide some valuable wisdom that's a bit more in depth on occasion. So, but thank you for being here. I'm so pleased that you're here. Thank you. Please do. Please do. I'm curious, dog training Mexico, are there other channels you'd recommend for Judy? Because I think sometimes the narcissistic abuse channels, I think they can really fuel a lot of anger and resentment. And I've certainly worked with people where they can be helpful sometimes in understanding some of the cycles of abuse and allowing people to feel like they're not alone, that other people have been through similar things. But sometimes they're also so angry, and they can, I think sometimes they keep people quite stuck and almost ruminating about narcissism, which is, I don't think is helpful to be ruminating about narcissism. Um, it can be helpful to have an understanding of narcissism if your ex was indeed narcissistic. Um, Not everyone who is diagnosing their ex-partners as having narcissism is right in their assessment. Some are, for sure, but not everyone. Um, it's really good. I mean, I tend to think, it's interesting. People say to me, "Oh, what do you do in therapy with people?" I'm like, well, actually, I really don't talk much about narcissism. I talk much more about self-compassion. I talk much more about developing healthy boundaries in relationships, much more about self-care, managing mood, managing anxiety, processing trauma. Actually, when I help someone who's been through an abusive relationship, including an abusive relationship with someone who has NPD, I don't spend therapy talking about narcissism. So, so, so Rebecca Zoom. I'm not familiar with Rebecca Zoom. I'll check her out. I'm not familiar with her. Why does it matter if she's a narcissist or a psychopath or something else? The question would be, how do you relate to her in the way that is the most helpful and healthy for you? What's the best possible relationship you can have with her, given her situation? Yeah, exactly. Be more concerned about Judy than about and understanding her soon-to-be ex-husband. I so agree with that. Um, so agree with that. Interesting. I'm actually putting together an online group at the moment, which will be paid for, but for people who've been through abusive relationships. And I don't even talk about narcissism in the group because it's not relevant. The much more relevant thing to me is understanding you and taking care of yourself and looking after yourself. Yeah. You see, this is what you'll get on the narcissistic abuse channels. Spot the red flags. And there are some ways where you might be suspecting someone might have NPD, but the question really is much more, how do you look after you? And how do you foster the kind of relationship that you want to foster with people? So, the focus should be on you, not on the other person. And I often say this as well. I work with a lot of people who are dating, and they've been through abusive relationships, and they want to go online dating, and they have that list of these are the red flags. But sometimes it's not obvious until it's too late. It's not obvious until you're further along. And I think if you I would be much more focused on, how do you spot signs of healthy behavior? How do you spot someone who's respectful, genuinely respectful of boundaries? How do you look for someone who is kind and considerate and who is interested in you genuinely and respects your values and is aligned with your values, and where you are also aligned with them, where you like and respect them? This is the place to focus. But look, this is early days, Judy. I'm assuming you're not going to go dating immediately, although I will not judge you if you do. I have certainly worked with people who have gone dating very soon after a relationship has broken down, after quite an abusive relationship has broken down. And in as much as most people wouldn't recommend it, on occasion, I've seen it work really well. So, people are people, and all of these things. Judy, if you are interested in that group, I'm literally putting it together now. I think it's going to be ready for the new year. If you go to my website, it's linked in the description of the channel, and you sign up. There's like a free download that I've got. It's like a self-compassion meditation while drinking tea. It's quite a nice little meditation. If you download that, you'll end up on my mailing list, and then you will definitely I will tell you when that group is running. And if you want to sign up to it, you'd be very, very welcome. No, not at least that's wise. That's wise. Give it a little time. Let the dust settle. Let the dust settle. So Karen is worried. You're worried about your sister, and you've witnessed her doing awful things with no remorse. Ooh. In the last few years, I've been reading up a lot on psychology. It's helped to understand her behavior patterns. Yeah. The thing is if someone is hurting you, or you've seen her do very hurtful things without remorse, I think the priority should be your safety and how to take care of yourself in it sounds like a very difficult relationship. But it is really, that's tough. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Judy, but let me know. But yeah. Hairdo Doc, hello. I recognize you from a previous chat. Your guy is picking up his things tomorrow. Brilliant. Because last time you were here, you didn't think he was going to come pick them up. So things have progressed. How do I keep my composure so I don't break down? I know this has to be. Oh, well, do you have to be there? I mean, that would be an interesting question. If anyone else in the chat has suggestions, let me know. Because look, there's no hard and fast answers here. And you've got to figure out what's good for you. But I would ask, do you need to be there? Do you have to be there? Might you have someone else there with you? Or would you could ask someone else to be there rather than you having to be there? You could leave the stuff ready for him to pick up and go out. It's very, very difficult. But I think you're right. If you know it has to be, and you're at the point of acceptance, the thing now is that you don't want this to be dramatic. You want this to be as calm and as peaceful as it can possibly be. So you don't want to be getting into probably a conversation with him. You don't want to be chewing over the past with him. You just want pick your stuff and go. So I hope that's helpful. I know in a similar situation, I just went out. I was like, keys here. Come in, leave, and go. So, but keeping the most minimum contact that you can. Wow, I'm so sorry, Karen. I'm sorry. That is tough. If you're really concerned about your father, there are certainly in most places there are some sort of procedures where you can raise those concerns with. In the UK, it would be social services, but it's really difficult. Yeah, and to just nobody needs that drama. Nobody needs that drama in their life. So, hi, Adam. I don't think I've seen you before. Are most abusers narcissists? Nope. Or have traits of narcissism? Nope. Most people who are abusive in their relationships do not have any mental disorder at all. The most common mental disorder in people who are abusive is depression. But so no, most abusers are not narcissists. But it's also true that there are aspects of narcissistic personality disorder that may make them more likely to be particularly emotionally abusive in their relationships. And that's just because of the dynamic of how they relate to people. And I've made quite a lot of videos about that, where really explaining that narcissism is at root a disorder of shame. So someone who's highly narcissistic usually feels like they are not fundamentally acceptable as they are. And so the way they cope is by being extraordinary or perfect or right. And they really struggle to have a mutual reciprocal relationship, because they struggle to acknowledge their mistakes, so they can become extremely defensive. And that's when you get behaviors that are often seen as gaslighting, or the kind of like inability to admit to having done something wrong when you clearly have the inability to apologize, because that just feels too vulnerable and too shameful. So, I hope that answers your question. Okay, we are deciding who keeps what. Oh, yeah. Can you do that by email? Because that could just get very, very dramatic. That could get so dramatic. If it's possible to, you might want to think about how do you keep the drama as low as possible, and don't engage in a fight. Do not engage in a fight. Oh, gosh, yeah, that could, yeah, you really, yeah. I think this is a very good suggestion. Yeah, yeah. So Howdy Doc is saying you think your neighbor will be on standby in case things get bad, but I think what Karen is suggesting is like having someone there. So, having someone there physically present does two things. One, it gives you some support, but two, it may also mean that your ex will be in best behavior, because they won't want to behave badly and be seen to behave badly in front of someone else. But if there are things that you need to negotiate on that are not obviously your ex's or yours, then if you can do that negotiation ahead of time, so he knows what he's there to pick up, and what he's not there to pick up. Because I think trying to negotiate that in person when you haven't had that conversation before, that does sound like a recipe for tensions to flare. Miss Awu, hello. I don't think we've met before either, so hello and welcome. You think you're narcissistic and are in therapy, but my therapist wants to meet only once every other week. Do you think that's enough, or would it be wise to ask an increased session so I heal faster? I'm curious as to why they're suggesting every other week. Normally at the start of therapy, I would suggest weekly at least, because you want to be building that bond and building that connection. Sometimes therapists have limited space, but so I'd be curious about the rationale for that. It's also normal that if I'm with someone who I've worked with for a long time, we have to meet fortnightly or even monthly, and that's fine. that works. But at the beginning, I think weekly can be helpful to build that connection. Um, how long have you been with your therapist? That would be another interesting question to know. But, and welcome. It's nice to see some unfamiliar faces. Is narcissism disorder recognized in the UK? Do they use the DSM? So narcissistic personality disorder. So narcissism is not a disorder itself. Narcissism is, well, the definition of narcissism is not very well defined. In the UK, we use the DSM or the ICD-10. I'm a psychologist. I actually don't tend to use diagnoses very often at all. But my psychiatry colleagues can and sometimes have made a diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. It would be, so does the NHS diagnose? So it would be something that might be diagnosed by a psychiatrist. In general, in most cases, I tend to see NPD diagnosed more in forensic settings rather than in general psychiatric practice, which is not to say that it doesn't exist in general psychiatric practice. I think it often does, but we don't necessarily diagnose it very often. I see I'm getting spammed. I'm going to see if I can basically boot this person out of the chat. There we go. There we go. There we go. I hope I've managed to get rid of the spammers. It's the first time that's happened. So yeah, EUPD and BPD is diagnosed way more, way more than NPD for sure. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that I don't know if I've ever seen NPD really diagnosed. Thank you, Karen. So did I. So did I. I had to do it quickly on my phone. So maybe that means I'm getting big now, that I actually have spammers come to my channel. I'm worth spamming. So EUPD stands for emotionally unstable personality disorder, or it's normally called borderline personality disorder. Last question, do psychologists diagnose in the UK? Some do, most don't. Many psychologists are a bit skeptical of the concept of personality disorder diagnoses. Personally, I'm not. I think it's quite helpful, particularly in terms of actually understanding that these are lifelong patterns that people are struggling with, that they probably come from childhood. I usually see them as a kind of adaptive behavioral response to very difficult, very traumatic circumstances. And that, my view is that they are not fixed and unchangeable, but that people can grow and evolve and develop as people. And as such, people who have personality disorders can grow and evolve, and people do quite often will meet criteria for a personality disorder at one point in their life and not later on. Yeah. So yeah, and generally it's a psychiatrist who does diagnosing in the UK. I mean, sometimes if people ask me, I'll give my impression, but a psychiatrist would do the formal diagnosis if a formal diagnosis was required. As a psychologist, I'm much more interested in the individual's experience and their stories and what their makeup is and how their difficulties are being maintained, as opposed to what is the diagnosis. And and also I think particularly with the kind of personality disorder diagnoses, people often will meet criteria for more than one personality disorder, or they might have one personality disorder that's dominant, but they may have traits of others. So I think it's much more meaningful to understand the individual, if that makes sense. You're welcome. I hope I answered your question well. Wow. Well, it is late here too. It's now 10 o'clock or just after 10 o'clock where I am. But it is lovely to see you, and I will look forward to seeing you again in another chat, hopefully. I'm trying to figure out when the best time to do chats is because I think most of the people who watch my channel are based in the States. YouTube give you funky analytics that tell you these things. So I can see that I have a lot in the States, and then the next kind of biggest is the UK. So I was kind of thinking this might be the best kind of time, because if I do it in my working day, it's going to be early morning in the States and in my UK audience working day. So please come live often. I've just subscribed. Well, I am planning, Adam, I am planning that I will probably try and do a live most Saturdays, but on occasion, I do have a life and I go out on a Saturday evening. But I will try. I will try. And if you have just subscribed, go in the community tab. I ask for like suggestions and things. Let me know. I'd be really curious, Adam, as well. It's like, what brought you to this channel? Like, why do you like it? What about this content is helpful to you? And welcome. I'm glad you're here. And Judy, you're very welcome. You are also welcome, Adam. Is there anything else people would like to talk about tonight before I sign off? I probably have time for like one or two more comments if you want me to, but otherwise I might call it a night. But I will hopefully see some of you again soon. What I will do as well is I will put in the community tab when I'm going to go live, so you can you kind of plan for it if you want to come and see me. You want to make a time, you'll know when I'm going to be here, and you'd be very welcome. But if there are no more comments, I may well just leave it there. But thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you again in another live. Thank you so much. Take care. I'm saying I'm still here.